Welcome back and a happy new year to you all, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good time. You didn't drink too much. You didn't do too many silly things. Or maybe you did, but you can't remember them. How about that then? Right. Let's talking of love and friendship and celebration. Let's talk about those besties. And we're talking, of course, about Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, because they're good mates now. Come on. I mean, they used to hate each other. Frank was always doing the shoulder roll whenever Eddie was, mentioned, and slagging him off and calling him a silver spoon kid and blah, 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 and Eddie, of course, would retort with, piss takes. And don't forget, for quite a few years, Eddie and Matchroom were flying high. Frank was loitering in the basement, trying to keep Box Nation afloat. And now the boot's on the other foot. Now, although Eddie and Matchroom are still very successful, Frank and Queensberry have made, quantum leaps up to the point where they now are going to start. Well, they have signed with DAZN, and they're going to start in 2025 broadcasting their shows on DAZN. Now, this does beg the question. And this is the question. This is the point of the video. Will the relationship, the friendly, good working relationship between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren continue? Will it? And just as a little sort of asterisk sideline, are they as pally as perhaps the impression they give, with the public? Because I think that Frank Warren, the strides that he and Queensberry have made, it's got to have put Eddie Hearn's nose out of joint. I said this in a previous video which I did on Frank Warren a few days ago. But let's talk a little bit about Eddie Hearn and how his plans have been, shall we say, maybe not destroyed entirely, but certainly reduced. Or let's put it this way. Let's talk about how Eddie Hearn's power or potential power has been diminished by the rise of Frank Warren and Queensberry. The video I made a few days ago talked about how Frank had rebuilt the UK scene and now dominates it, whereas Eddie, in terms of looking for world domination, had let the UK scene go. And the UK, of course, for both Eddie and Frank, is their base. That's their bread and butter, their meat and potatoes. You know what I mean? That's where they built their names. So it seems to have been at best naive for Eddie to kind of say, well, I've done the UK scene. I did that with Sky, I dominated it. Let's go and conquer the world. No, you need a platform to work from, to bounce from. And the UK scene is the one that made your name. That's the foundation of your success. So to let it go, I think, was a very, very big mistake by Eddie. He spread himself too thin internationally, and even though Matchroom, they're still doing well. They're not, it's not like the arse has fallen out of the whole company or anything, or the whole of Eddie's entire plans. But there's no doubt that his nose has been put out of joint. Now think back to when Eddie was still at Sky, and prior to leaving Sky, Matchroom and Eddie were broadcasting on DAZN as well. That DAZN deal predated Eddie leaving Sky. A lot of people forget this. When he did leave Sky and go to DAZN, it was because he viewed it as this is the 21st century way. The 2020, whatever it was, 1 or 2 or whatever it was. This is what the platform is going to be for all sport. DAZN will be the Netflix of boxing, and it will lay pay-per-view to rest. Okay. Well, the second point, laying pay-per-view to rest, quite the contrary. We've got more pay-per-views than ever, and a lot of them are on DAZN. The days of $1.99 to subscribe to DAZN are long, long gone. And they were losing, millions. I mean, money hand over fist. I know you've got to speculate to accumulate, as the old cliche goes, but you can't go on just hemorrhaging money. Of course, Netflix did as well, as I said before in a previous video. If you look at the history of Netflix, they were losing money hand over fist, big money. But it took off, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar company. DAZN are hoping to do the same thing. And I think they're back on track now that, Turki Al-Sheikh has come on board. There have been rumours of him wanting to buy DAZN. I don't know. Jesus, even by his standards, that would be a lot of money. And, I think ultimately Turkey wants to take over boxing, or at least, at the very least, dominate it to the point where there is, in my opinion, going to be too much power concentrated in one place. Again, I've said this many times before, but you need checks and balances to control someone who has, if someone's got all the power, they've got all the money, basically you're taking what you're given. You don't have any power. You don't have any economic power, okay, other than to say, well, I'll opt out and I won't do anything. This happened, by the way, in the UK in the early 90s, mid-90s, when Frank Warren went to Sky, left ITV, bailed out of boxing, and suddenly boxing wasn't on terrestrial telly. So he didn't get the Ben Eubank, 18 million people watching the fight or whatever the hell it was. And I know you had to subscribe to Sky, you had to, buy Sky, get Sky Sports and all this, and suddenly boxing became a niche cult sport, whereas prior to that it was threatening to be mainstream. It was never going to be as big as football. You know what I mean? That's what happens when you get too much, when there's no alternative. You either bail out and give up your sport that you love, that you may have paid thousands of pounds investing in, going to shows and so on, buying tickets and whatever, or you pay through the nose and you have no power. You've got to take what's given. So even though I'm very suspicious, very skeptical and a little bit fearful of the idea of Turki Al-Sheikh taking over boxing in general, nevertheless, the money he's put into DAZN, or the relationship, the working partnership he looks like he's going to have with DAZN, has helped DAZN out, in terms of finances. Because we've seen in the past, Riyadh season shows being on Sky, TNT, DAZN, and other networks as well, foreign networks. So that has helped DAZN. But if you remember back to when Eddie was talking about it, that was his platform. Suddenly, he was the one that was going to conquer the world through DAZN, through this new revolutionary platform, this Netflix of boxing, no more pay-per-views. This is a new thing. And you know what? I'm here. It's mine. And then Oscar De La Hoya came on board, with Golden Boy. And it's okay, I've got a little bit of rivalry there. Nothing I can't handle. Okay, I can do that. But nevertheless, it was a rivalry because Oscar's got some good fighters. A lot of Golden Boy shows are pretty decent. I think Golden Boy do some good shows, some very good shows, some very underrated shows. But this is something altogether different. With the arrival of Turki Al-Sheikh and Frank Warren being his sidekick, being his main man, being the man he goes to, and, bringing Eddie on board as a sort of, I wouldn't say a foil to Frank Warren, but as that the 5 versus 5 was clearly based on rivalry. And yes, they were getting on, and they, Frank and Eddie were having a good time. They met each other finally, and they were quite complimentary of each other. And there was even a little bit of humour involved. But Eddie, getting Frank and Eddie, Eddie gets obliterated. Matchroom get obliterated in the 5 versus 5. All right. And then suddenly that triggered something. I mean, it was when Frank talked about it being a game changer, the Tyson Fury and Ngannou fight. We were all thinking, what's he talking about? Tyson Fury fighting Ngannou. I was guilty of this. But he wasn't really talking about that. He was talking about the deal with the Saudis, which went way beyond Fury versus Ngannou. And Fury versus Ngannou, of course, was a success. It was even curious to the hardcores because Fury got floored, even though I thought he clearly won the fight. He got floored, right? So suddenly Frank was taken off, and Eddie suddenly had the influence of Turki Al-Sheikh and Frank Warren, which was a two-pronged attack. Suddenly he wasn't the main man at DAZN. Now we've got Top Rank and Uncle Bob, who's 158 or whatever he is, coming over, leaving ESPN and moving to DAZN. This is all stuff that reduces Eddie Hearn from being top of the tree at DAZN to not an also-ran. I mean, Matchroom is still very important, but just one of many, rather than being the only one there, rather than being king of the castle. He's no longer king. He's been reduced to being just, say, one of the lords, if you like, but only one of them, and probably not the main one. I think Frank Warren and Queensberry are going to be the ones now. So this begs the question, is the relationship between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren going to last? Will it last? I'm not convinced. And like I said at the start of the video, I do think that behind the scenes, I'm sure Eddie and Frank Smith and all the Matchroom lot are thinking, this isn't good. You know, suddenly we're reduced to just one of a team almost. It's gone from being our solo project to being not just where we're just, like I say, one of a group of people, but also my plans are sort of have to be put on the back burner. I can't dominate boxing because it's all down to Turkey, and it's all down to they've got to consider all the other promoters as well. So I think there will be a cooling, let's put it that way, a cooling of the relationship between Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn and their respective companies as Frank and Queensberry make further strides. And I expect them to in 2025. I expect Queensberry to keep going up, and for Matchroom to, maybe tread water, make a bit of progress here and there. If I was in charge of Matchroom, and obviously I'm not, but I would really look to build domestically and try and win back the UK market, or at the very least rival Queensberry, because it was only 5 years ago when it was a no contest in favour of Matchroom. Now it's almost a no contest in favour of Queensberry, the UK scene, I mean. Yes, Eddie has his fingers in lots of foreign pies, who are misses, but you need that base to work from, because it's something to come back to. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like an actor. An actor gets a script, and that script is the basis of their performance. And once they know the script and they've conquered it and they know it, they can sort of go off at tangents. They can improvise. They can do all that sort of Stanislavski method stuff. But because they know if they're getting lost, they can come back to the script. If Eddie goes out and runs shows all over the world, and let's say they start, I mean, they're good shows, don't get me wrong, but let's say that he doesn't get as much funding, or for whatever reason, he's not able to do what he wants to internationally. He needs that script, which is the British, the UK scene, to come back to. If you've got that, you've got a future. You can, there will be peaks and troughs in anyone's career or any promotional outfit's progress. And again, I repeat, Matchroom is not dead in the water. Don't get me wrong, I'm not implying that Matchroom is finished. Far from it, a long way from it. But it does beg the question, as a little aside, that Eddie Hearn, if he realises, or if he begins to think, do you know what, I can't do what I set out to do. I can't dominate boxing as I wanted to. This is the test. This is the iron test. Will he stick around into his 50s? What is he now, 45, 46? Will he stick around into his 50s, his 60s? Frank Warren, and I said this in my video that I did on Frank, tough man, mentally very, very, very strong, as mentally strong as any of the fighters he's ever promoted, right? He's been shot, he's been bankrupted, he's been sued, he's lost millions, he's had to borrow millions, he's going into debt and all sorts of stuff. He's still here. Now he's top of the tree again at 72. That's because he came from, not nothing, but he came from a wheeler and dealer working class background. Those people, if they've got the intelligence and they learn how to do business, they are tough people to beat. Someone like an Eddie Hearn, who comes from a very privileged background, is a very, very good businessman, very, very good promoter, but he comes from a privileged background. When his back's against the wall and he's getting a good kicking, is he going to stick around? Is he going to say, okay, I'll come up with another 5-year plan or even a 10-year plan? It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. His old man, don't forget Barry Hearn, he came from a not dissimilar background to Frank, and he bailed. Maybe Eddie's tougher than his old man. We shall see. Anyway, what do you think? Do you think this relationship between Frank and Eddie will continue? Let me know what you think. Comments below, as usual. I love reading them. And if I've said anything, or if I haven't said anything that crosses your mind, leave it down there. I mean, I like to have a read. This ain't an echo chamber. This is your channel as much as mine. So put your comments down there. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, because it costs you nothing and it takes a second. Pop that subscribe button, and also hit the like button as well. Look, much love to all of you. Happy New Year. I'll catch you later. Bye for now. I'm out.